This is an intro. Intro.
Hustle and Float Chart with your boy,
My boy.
Matt Wolf and Joe Fier.
Hey.
What are you laughing at?
It's Halloween tomorrow.
Well, not when this is coming out. It was Halloween like 2 weeks ago when this came out.
Oh, well, it's almost Halloween here. In present time, but not in... What is time anyway, Matt?
It doesn't. It's a human construct. Let's not get into this discussion because then we'll have like a 2-hour intro.
Matt, time is freedom. Let's free up your time on this podcast with Dana Robinson.
But it's also a man-made construct. I mean, we all just made up
Matt,
time as
don't
this
go down the
linear
rabbit hole.
form of... Okay.
You're not Joe Rogan yet. Maybe one day. All right. So today, we are talking to Dana Robinson. What's happening?
I'm just upset that he said I'm not...
Oh, that was a mic drop, by the way.
We've been doing this all day long. We're just very, very feisty now.
I think we're feisty, we're tired, and we need to take a walk and get outside. But that's okay because today's show with Dana Robinson, he created something with his partner Nate called Opt Out Life. And essentially this is, hey, let's leverage your time best. Let's just do the highly leveraged things that you want to do in your life, in your business, and actually make really fucking good money without killing yourself. So that is essentially the crux of everything that we're going to talk about. Dana's amazing. He's a lawyer. He actually owned a landscaping company. I didn't realize that. Like when he was in school still. He's done a lot of stuff. I've known him for over 10 years. He's been our legal counsel for a while now in multiple businesses. He lived for over a year in Bali.
Yeah.
Wrote a book, has a podcast, has done a ton of real estate.
Yeah, rental properties that he rents out. And you know, so so some of the things we're going to talk about, this is sort of a wide-ranging conversation, but the main focus of this episode is really on, you know, how do you opt out of the sort of quote-unquote rat race? How do you get out of the normal day-to-day 9 to 5, go to a job, grind? And that's what their whole brand is about. And so we're going to discuss all sorts of ways that we did that, or to do that. You know, we discuss it from our perspective and his perspective. The way he did it, he just moved to Bali for an undetermined amount of time and basically had to figure out how to create a bunch of systems in his business to make him to help support that. So we dive into all those systems that he created to make sure that could happen. We talked about the real estate and how that generates passive income.
But it's like real estate with a different angle. It's not like, hey, let's just get a bunch of houses or condos. It's very strategic.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
it's like
he's willing to
taxes.
lose money on his real estate, and we'll get into exactly why that is. But he's totally willing to lose money on real estate because there's other benefits to losing that money.
Quote unquote losing money.
Yeah. So we'll get into that. But then, you know, he is a lawyer, so we had to ask him some legal questions. I wanted to clarify some legal stuff that's commonly asked. Things like
Using stock photos.
using
or
stock
Google
photos on your website, your terms and conditions, your privacy policies,
GDPR.
GDPR, all of the legal buzzwords that keep popping up that, you know, everybody's kind of scared about approaching. And
Or they use these templates online that, you know, for all these policies and stuff, terms and condition that are probably hurting you more than helping you.
Yeah, so we dive into all of that, but we're also really, really focused around this opt-out life and how do you systematize things so that you can get yourself out of your business. And he has some amazing advice. And I mean, I think we got the most excited when he started talking about the real estate stuff.
True. Anybody could do this stuff. It's super simple, but a lot of this hinges on getting the right systems and people in place in your company. Transition to our sponsor.
Seamless.
So
Nailed
like
it.
that? Bam. We're still working on this whole thing. It's new to us. But all right. So we've been using this thing, GenM.
GENM.
Yes.
You got to make sure you spell it because otherwise people might go Jen like Jen, like Jenny.
Not
but
like
it's
that.
GENM.
Yes, correcto mundo. So what that is it's essentially this big old database. It's a company that's aggregated a bunch of willing students who are marketing trained, but they just need someone like you, a business owner who has some marketing tasks that they don't have the capacity to do or they shouldn't be doing or whatever, but you want to use some help who is willing and capable and very inexpensive. So for $50 a month, for 40 hours per month of work, up to 3 months kind of term there, you can get someone of this caliber, this high caliber, and actually do some of these tasks in your business that you probably shouldn't be doing.
Yeah.
Stuff like driving traffic and doing copy, blogging, video editing. I mean, there's all sorts of different things in your business that you're probably not thinking about. Death by a million cuts.
SEO, etc. Yeah, I mean, we're using Gen M ourselves, so we're actively using this service and paying for it. They're not paying us to they are paying us to say this, but they're not paying us to use their service or anything. We're not getting it paid for. We do pay for their service.
We were using it prior to being to them being a sponsor.
There you go. That's the best way to say it. Now, the best way to explain it is to send you to evergreenprofits.com/GenM, GENM, and they actually made a video that explains it probably better than we possibly can explain it. Mm-hmm. So go there. It's basically a way to get labor in your business essentially for $50 a month and get 40 hours a month of services from people.
A virtual apprentice.
Virtual apprentice or a virtual intern for $50 a month. So go to evergreenprofits.com/GenM. There's a video on that page that explains the whole process. We swear by it now, and we love it in our business.
Go check it out, evergreenprofits.com/GenM. Now on to the show.
Dana Robinson, here we come.
What? Hey, Dana, how you doing, man?
Good. How are you guys doing?
Awesome.
Good.
It's our podcast day. We love these days, as I'm sure you do on yours too.
I do. It's the funnest thing. That's hard to describe, sitting down with people and being able to just, get curious with them and ask them anything.
Yeah. Well, you do it kind of like where or you have your own like in-person studio and all that stuff. Do you do everything in person or is it kind of a mix?
Yeah. For now, everything's in person. So it's just part of the style we're trying to keep with kind of the radio quality and the interaction you get when you're staring someone in the face or drinking some scotch with them. And, we want people to feel like they're with us, having a beer with this person. So that's part of the method is actually being there with the person.
Yeah, for sure. So you are a Scotch guy, right?
I do. I'm sort of into bourbon and rye now. But I mean, maybe when we first met, Joe, I might have been hosting a Scotch tasting event at my house.
Exactly
I did that for one of those networking events. It was fun. We put up 9 bottles of brown bagged whiskeys, essentially all Scotches. And the number one was the most expensive, was a Macallan 19 year, I think.
What
and the number 2 was Trader Joe's like $28 12-year Scotch.
So this was like a blind taste testing. Everybody just kind of took a sip out of this brown bag, and that's how it sort of panned out.
Well, there was we had little tasters. Went to IKEA and bought like 100 little tasting glasses and put a bunch in front of each. So you'd literally just like take a little sip of each, and then we had a whiteboard and you'd rank them right there. So everybody ranked, and at the end we tallied it up. And so no one had to share the brown bag like a
you were just passing it around.
Like a homeless derelict drinking $300 whiskey out of a paper bag.
So these weren't like shot glass samples, because I imagine by the time you get to like 10, you're like, I don't know, these all fucking taste great.
They were shot glasses, but in theory, you weren't supposed to fill it up. I mean, it was for tasting, and then you pick the one you want, and we had full-size rocks glasses, so you could pour and put some ice in or whatever you wanted after that. But I ended up with most of those scotches lasted for several more events, so I have to believe that with 60 people at the house, we probably did okay at not getting shit-faced. There was plenty of leftovers.
I do remember that party. I think it was in La Jolla there. Yeah. No, you and Nate, your partner Nate, you guys have always held some really cool parties, and obviously the opt-out event you just had, or opt-out life event. We found ourselves actually, Matt and I were wearing the shirts from your event on the same day when we were recording our last podcast recordings, and we're like, dude, we shouldn't be wearing another person's brand on the same day.
No.
We don't have our own.
You're representing us. Thank you. I appreciate that very much.
I think even on video somewhere, I don't know what we recorded. It was a little weird, but I was like,
we're making cool swag. The backup plan, if people just hate the podcast and hate the Opt-Out Life platform, is we'll at least have some cool t-shirt designs we can sell.
For sure. And that's something we're lacking. So just really ask who your designer is. Talk about that later. But give us the scoop. I guess catch everybody else up. And I probably don't know half of the stuff you've done or what you do now. You kind of do a lot, but also not do a lot, which is the whole opt-out thing, opt-out life approach. So give us a little background and catch us up to where you're at now.
Yeah. I mean, historically, I'm technically a lawyer. So I guess you'd say my day job, my profession is lawyer. But even before I went to law school, I was an entrepreneur. And when I was 19, I started a landscape business, ended up growing that, acquiring another business, and then selling that. I started a coffee house toward the end of my landscape season. Wow. While I was still in grad school. And then I actually went into the ministry. I was a pastor and vice principal of an elementary school at a large church complex up in Escondido.
Wow.
And then left that and went to law school. And in law school, I was really not planning to necessarily be a lawyer. I just wanted a secular degree, a profession, something I could do to make money with my time and kind of claw my way out of the sort of blue collar, lower rungs of the middle class that's so difficult to claw out of. Yeah. So law school just sounded like it might get me there. And in law school, I actually started something that I didn't realize I probably could have built a business around. I reserved a domain name and taught myself to code and built a website called freelegalaid.com. And I didn't know at the time, but this is like in 98, 99. I probably could have got VC money and funded a startup and sold it to somebody before the market crashed. But I built a site thinking this is what you do when you learn how to write HTML and JavaScript. And that site's actually a side gig of mine that has allowed me to do a lot of cool stuff because it makes about $3,000 a month right now. And I don't do anything to it. So on the one hand, I missed the opportunity to become like a tech startup entrepreneur in the year 98, 99. On the other hand, here I am 20 years later with something that throws off $30,000+ a year that I don't have to work that hard for.
Yeah, it didn't crash. You're still spitting out cash.
Yeah. What does this site do? I didn't catch that.
Well, it's a site with free legal resources. Essentially,
gotcha.
It does what I built it to do in the late 90s was just have free resources. And then I figured lawyers would write articles to advertise themselves and just contribute, free resources. You want to know how to do this, fill out this form. Find this resource. It turned out at the time, lawyers were scared of the internet and no one wanted to contribute. And I got shunned from one of the biggest lawyer BBSs, a bulletin board, for even the thought of doing something commercial. But I came back to it and built more content around it in maybe 03 and 04 and plugged in AdSense and just started letting the AdSense make money. And I remember it hitting $50 a month, and I was like, "Wow, that in a month I'll get a payout," because the payouts were at $100 a month.
Yeah.
So every other month I'm going to get $100. This is amazing. A few years later, I was doing $500 a month, and then I had one point got it shut down for not having new content. And that's about the time I was making friends with Nate and a bunch of guys in the search engine marketing and web marketing space. And so I learned a lot and actually used all that knowledge to rebuild the site and redeploy it. And that's how it started growing and making some more substantial money.
Yeah.
Site Free Legal Aid's kind of my go-to side gig to describe for people what do you do for a side gig? Well, publish a website with cool content that has information people want and then make money from ads.
That's brilliant. So what other cool stuff has that site specifically led you to? I know you said there's quite a bit of things. It became my kind of ticket to not being a lawyer and hanging out with non-lawyer people. So it's kind of funny. If you go to network and you're just a lawyer, then people don't really, unless they need what you have, then you're sort of the odd man out. I wanted to hang out with cool people and go to networking events around technology and kind of be there as an entrepreneur or at least a side gigger. And so it gave me something to talk about. And in fact, when we first went to this event called Think Tank, that a mutual friend of all of ours named DK, love Think Tank.
Dr. Klein, put us all together. And, I wasn't there to get people to use me as a lawyer. I didn't really care. I wanted to learn from them. I was there to be curious and meet cool people and drink too much. And I did all of those things. And along the way, learned a bunch of cool stuff about, the web, search marketing, better ways to code. I started rebuilding that site on Drupal, and I was then learning to build stuff on WordPress, before it became de jure as the sort of what everyone uses. So, it became my ticket to hang out with cool people, and that opened the door to a lot of other relationships and other sites that I've built that haven't done as well. But it's been a fun journey. And I think that crazy side gig I started when I was working in a library in law school, free legal aid was one of the catalysts for all of that.
So are you still creating new content on it, or like how is it still going?
Yep, I create new content. We actually, at this point, can charge people to put content. We have at least enough authority that we can charge a little bit. So there's a few $100s a month that comes in paid articles. If people post really good articles, we'll post them for free, even if they've got some links in them. Mm-hmm. And then, always looking for content we can curate. So, it's most of the new content I'm building now is, once a month I might spend a couple of hours and just sort of go in and build a static page and coalesce some content that's already in the site around that. So it's more like I'm curating what I have than adding, a lot of new stuff to it. But
that's probably a good SEO approach.
Not a lot of work, but you know how it is with Google likes you better if you've got fresh content on a regular basis. And so that's kind of the way we're doing it right now. It's just adding articles. In the beginning, I paid writers. When I realized I needed a lot of content to just hit lots of search terms throughout the country, I paid $20 an article and just had a whole bunch of articles done. And then I paid someone else to drop in resources. And we have a mapping system. So if you put in an address, it shows you the location. So I paid small amounts of money for offshore help to do a lot of that.
Yeah, no, that's what Matt was saying. He was like, "That's a steal for $20."
Yeah,
Jesus.
Now, are you still? How much time do you actually spend doing lawyer stuff these days? I mean, outside of creating content, I know you still review contracts and stuff because you've reviewed a few contracts for us. Mm-hmm. How much time are you spending on that side of your business?
I'm trying to spend as little as possible now. I mean, I guess I can take you back to a crisis that I had. I mean, as an entrepreneur, I've known, Joe since back at the, DK days 10, 12 years ago and hosting events at my house. At that point, I had a couple of side gigs. I had invested in 3 different properties. So I had 90 units of apartments. I had money and time with maybe 6 other ventures that I'd helped co-found. And the market had crashed. And so I was like working as a lawyer as much as possible all through that. And about the time the economy was kind of turning around, my daughter had gone off to college, and I was still on this hamster wheel kind of thing, just kind of going crazy, working a lot. And I wasn't seeing a lot of money at the bottom line, and a lot of my time being spent on other ventures was not really bringing me any fruit either happiness or money. So I came home one day and said to my wife, I go, we should just sell everything and move to Bali. It was like a moment of exasperation. And she looked at me, cocked her head and said, I was just thinking the same thing yesterday.
Wow.
And, there's no reason that she should have been thinking that, but she was. And so I was like, all right, this is serious. Let's go have a talk.
Like specifically Bali? She was
Bali,
thinking,
yeah. I mean, the only thing we knew about Bali was that maybe 4 months earlier, our favorite bartender at a restaurant in La Jolla was a surfer, and he's like, "Hey guys, I'm moving to Bali." And we're like, "For how long?" He's all, "No, like I'm moving." Yeah. And we go, "Oh, how do you do that? That's crazy." And so maybe it planted a seed that Bali was a place to just escape. And we had traveled all over the world, but never been to Bali. And I don't know that Bali was necessarily the ultimate destination. When we sat down and talked, I was like, okay, well, Bali is just a proxy for let's get out of Dodge.
Yeah.
What do we really want to do? We want to get control of our time and our lives again. We want to do something fun. We want to, have some way kind of like get out from under what seems like this rat race that we should have more control over, because work for myself, I have some side gigs, I'm invested in what should be some decent assets, but it was suffocating in a way. So we actually talked about, well, there's Panama and there's Costa Rica, and we had been to parts of Vietnam and Thailand, and they're cheap. But we actually decided on Bali and spent 6 months kind of extracting from life.
So how did that, like, how did you do that? So you have this legal firm. I know you have a team. You have properties. You had all this other stuff happening. How did that transition look like?
Yeah, that's what took so long. I mean, it was a very disciplined effort. Oddly, about 2 weeks after we came to this conclusion, I had a planned little meetup with basically two people that were full-time working for me. So I had a lawyer that worked full-time for me and a paralegal, and we were supposed to have a little planning retreat in Hawaii, which was mostly just vacation, goofing off. But we were going to do some annual, like, sit down, have a little come to Jesus, like, what are we doing? And I think they expected it to be planning, and I originally did too, but instead I popped this on them. I said, well, guys, I know we're supposed to plan on what to do with the firm, but I need a break, and I think I'm going to move out of the country for an indefinite period of time. I can get you guys jobs if you want. You probably make more money if someone else than you do for me. And both of them, without even talking to each other, basically were like, we could keep it going. Like, wow. We like you. We like what we're doing. We like our control over our time. So why don't we just empower you to do that and not work very much? And you'll still make some money probably. So it was a cool, something I didn't really plan to happen. Driven by their motivation to kind of keep a cool thing going that, I'd say my paralegal could probably make 50% more pay if she went to work for a firm, but she'd be ass in chair, 9 to 5 or whatever, the clock is. So, she and the lawyer were both motivated to preserve a life they liked. And it was cool because then they basically were able to make that whole law practice like a side gig for me. And do the work. And we had like 4 cases in litigation. I have a base of several hundred clients. But Kayla, the lawyer, had worked for me for a few years and kind of knew the routine and knew how to handle things. And so I took a chance and I, made that. We did a lot of planning, that was probably the number one thing was how do you plan to manage your life? Yeah. When you go from full time as a business owner, a lawyer, or whatever, to an hour a day.
Let's talk about that because I'm just curious, and just to relate to what you're saying here. Matt and I aren't going to Bali anytime soon. I mean, I'd like to, but we're
after this episode, I might
maybe. But the short-term goal that we have is work 3 days a week. That's time behind the computer, get stuff done. The other days are spend however we wish. And it exactly how you said, Kayla and your paralegal basically supported you. That's pretty much what Shannon, our ops manager, is doing for us. She knows of our goal and she's purposely telling us, okay, let's track your time. Let's analyze that. Let's look at the stuff you shouldn't be doing, that non-high value stuff. And she's driving it. And it feels amazing. We didn't have that. This is the first time we've ever actually put that kind of person in place, and it's huge. So I love that.
Yeah, delegation's important. I think I loved. It's funny because I read 4 Hour Work Week like 10 years ago, and I remember thinking this is cool stuff, but there's no way to pull this off as a lawyer. I mean, I'm a professional. I have to be available for my clients. I can't just delegate everything and disappear like Tim Ferriss, go hang out in Spain. And it wasn't until I was already in Bali doing it that I was like, hey, wait a minute, I'm doing that stuff. Like it was an epiphany that came back to me that I was pulling off some of this 4 Hour Work Week kind of stuff without having gone back to the old Bible of Tim Ferriss's work and reevaluated it. It was just sort of a seed planted and it worked. So delegation is important, which means you do have to have people that love what they're doing, that you treat well, that can do the lifting. But a lot of it's like, how do you manage the death by 1,000 cuts, which is this constant email barrage that sort of fills our day. And I remember at the time thinking, geez, I get 200 emails a day and I have to reply to many of those. And if you add those up and just say each one's 4 minutes of my time, not including a little buffer in between that you need to clear your head, you're talking about hundreds of minutes, which turns into like 10-hour days where and that as a lawyer often doesn't even get paid. You're just like flying through the day managing, and then you come home at night and have to actually do the work that you didn't do because you were getting slaughtered by emails all day. So our first approach was to do a live test of foldering all of my emails through other people. So basically the staff would get access to my emails, organize those emails and prioritize those, and then deal with anything they could. And then they would, for example, an urgent folder means this needs to happen today. And billable folder means this is where you go for billable stuff. But if we didn't put it in urgent, it's not urgent and we're probably managing it. So just get to it when you can. And then, a personal folder that, look, this is where family stuff goes and friends. And, you just get to those when you want to. And we did this before I left. So we set all that up and created that system that included a little bit of delegation and a little bit of like digital organization. And so that was one of the key things that we did prior. And then I had to go through all of the, we digitized, we got out of paper as much as we could. And, as a lawyer, a lot of lawyers are slow to get out of paper. So it just forced us to become as digital as possible.
I like what you said there with death by a million cuts, because I think we all probably have something that we do every day, and it's probably email for most of us, that you don't quite add up. Because I know when we're tracking our time, Matt and I both, me more so because I'm more, dealing with customers and prospects, all that stuff. I could definitely relate to that feeling of where I can handle this, but then the second you want to step away, you're like, oh shit. So I like what you did there.
Look, there was a famous author wrote a book called The 1 Minute Manager in the 80s. And the principle, one of the main principles was never touch a piece of paper twice. So, you avoid the stacks, you're efficient, something comes in, you address it immediately because you're already distracted by, you're already touching it. And the problem with email is if you follow this, then your productivity can be very high in terms of if productivity includes answering emails. But the problem is that so much of email is someone pushing something to you that I think, or organizing them and prioritizing them and then waiting to respond to them becomes a necessary piece of a process you have to implement if you want to get distance from the emails and not be forced to react all the time. And it does mean in some cases touching the same thing more than once. But I just think that 1 minute manager approach isn't relevant in an age of paperlessness. There's too much ease of someone communicating with you through all these media to immediately react to everything all the time, even though it's satisfying. It's not a productive way to run a business. You lose mind share the entire time, right? And as a business owner, your ultimate value is actually and not necessarily in replying to those emails. It's what you say and how you say it, and the conclusions you come to. Right? Mind share is what we're good at once you master your business.
Yeah. Now, so when you left for this trip for Bali, I know, so you got the Gmail all kind of, or the email all systematized, so people were filtering it into folders. Were there any other things that you kind of had your hands in on a daily basis that you had to find some new systems for?
Yeah, there were several. I mean, I had sold one of my two of the apartment complexes, and so I was involved to some extent with one last apartment complex, but we just delegated that to a management company, which I'd been hesitant to do because I have horror stories about management companies. But the management company hired was managed by my other business partner in that building, so that felt good. So it was kind of this extraction where you go, okay, I'm going to let that partner deal with the management company, and now I'm out. And then, okay, let's take this business. Does this business deserve my attention? Am I getting paid for my attention? Do they really need me? And, I resigned from a nonprofit board. I sort of assessed each business, and I had some of these little half-finished websites that nag at you, that kind of eat some of your time and also eat mind share. And some of those you just shut down. You just go, okay, I was progressing on this another website that publishes content. I'm just going to stop. I'll leave it. If I get back to it in a year, good. If it's 10 years, good. I own the domains. I'm just going to not spend time, give that any mind share. And so it was a matter of taking all of those, the business interests and investments and paring them all down. And then the last two were, I had my most significant business partners at the time was a shoe business and audiobooks. And I just told them what I was doing and said, I'm here if you need me, but there's going to be some distance. So just, keep that in mind. And just the distance and the time zone change forced them to be more cognizant of my time, probably in terms of communicating. And then I tried to deliver when they needed me. I tried to deliver the best I could for them. So it was a little bit more of going from quantity relationships with my business partners to quality. Mm-hmm. And, for those two, they're good friends, people that I love and who love me. And so it was those last two pieces that were the most important investments turned out to be not a burden to sort of keep, because there was respect for my time. So there was a lot of this, besides turning that law practice way, way down, taking all of these, what seemed like dozens of moving parts and just pruning and narrowing it down and turning the communications around.
Go ahead, man.
I was just going to add real quick, did the income take a big hit as a result, or did you manage to stay pretty steady?
No, the law practice did like 40% better the year I was gone.
Yes.
And then when I came back, and I worked a lot the first year coming back because I thought I needed to, I shouldn't have. My revenue went back down. So
wow. Got too in the weeds.
Yeah. And then at the beginning of 2018, I said, oh, wait a minute. I've been back a little over a year. It didn't go well. I looked at my financials, because those are always, smart way to evaluate whether you're doing the right thing. And I went, man, I had more people, more staff, more time, more hassles. I didn't progress much on the thing that I was most focused on, which was the opt-out, finishing the book and getting the podcast up. I didn't do any of that in 2017, and made less money than when I was in Bali, not working very much. So I sat down again with the main lawyer, and I'm like, all right, I'm doing something wrong. She's like, yes, we took on too much. Let's scale it back and treat it like we did before. And so 2018 has been running my ventures the same as I did when I was in Bali, but without having to move time zones.
Yeah. I'm just thinking, like, this is the mind share thing. I think it's like the hidden gem that we all have is, I just think back of the time Matt and I have worked together 12 years now, off and on, but mindshare, just getting so sucked into all these different areas in business, it sucks that mindshare, but you don't really realize it unless you assess it like you did, or maybe force yourself to leave for a little bit. And
yes, it is forcing yourself. Totally. Yeah. And it's hard to force yourself. I mean, with Bali, there was no choice. Once I was there, and the time zone there helped a lot in terms of forcing everyone to comply with my will, because at between 5 p.m. and 6 p.m. here on the West Coast in California, it's 8 to 9 a.m. tomorrow in Bali.
Right.
So, for example, today at 5 o'clock, if I want to have a phone call with a buddy of mine that's in Bali, it's going to be 8 in the morning. And so what I was able to do from Bali side was know that I'm available for that hour in the morning, sipping tea, taking care of business. I'd answer the emails, and then it would go silent. There was no one to call me, no one to email me. And so, because no one wants to start their work when you start yours, right? I'm not going to have business partners and, staff and clients even bugging me at 7 p.m. Right. On the West Coast, which is going to be, 10 a.m. for me in Bali. So it freed the time. It forced the sort of like freedom. If you're going to do it here, you have to have way more discipline, because, for you guys, for example, you take those 2 days that you use to do your thinking and creativity, to get out and hike or surf or whatever you want to do. You're gaining mindshare, but you have to have discipline to do that, because you don't have a time zone difference. It's going to force it on everybody.
Would you almost like recommend someone to do a Bali type move, maybe a temporary few weeks or so?
I think it's a great idea to just sort of like, it's not a bad segue. And I can tell you that if you're a busy entrepreneur and you really want to kind of find an extraction where you say, okay, I want to tone things down, automate, delegate, I want to do those things, set it up with a 1 month sabbatical in Bali. I mean, Bali is wildly cheap. It's the time zone thing makes it perfect, because as I described, it forces you into a sort of time warp that no one else can undo. And why not have a month of like break, a mini sabbatical where I tell you the first like 2 weeks, I just slept a lot. I mean, you guys know from being entrepreneurs, it's physically exhausting sometimes. And so to just have days where you just go, okay, I took care of business an hour in the morning. I got nothing to do. I'm going to take a walk on the beach. You get tired, you take a nap. You go surfing, you come back, you take a nap. So there was a lot of the things that I think a lot of entrepreneurs and creatives need to re-energize that you get from an extended vacation. And if you did this as a tool, then you're basically saying, okay, staff or virtual assistant or however you set up your organization to give you this extraction, it's not a bad segue to experiment with. And then to say to people when you come back, we're going to use these folders and this digital systems, and my availability will be as such. And if you force it, then it'll work.
Yeah. Yeah. I know personally for myself, I'm sure you too, Matt, we almost have this as entrepreneurs. If we build it, it's like, this is part of me. And you kind of want your hands in the mix at all times, even though that might lead to less money in your pocket at the end of the day. But for me, it's almost like a guilt. Sometimes, if I'm away on a vacation, I'm like, oh shit, I got to check in really quick, or, Matt or the team might need something. So it's like, I feel like what you just described, the month sabbatical forces you to do it. Different location, different time zone, all that stuff. Where for myself, I think that would definitely kind of splice that guilt feeling.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's really two elements of it. There's the two elements that are reasons why we don't really do that kind of stuff. One is the sort of guilt of feeling like we're pushing it over to other people, and then the other thing is the feeling that the people we're pushing it to aren't going to do a good job. Like, I don't know if I totally trust the people I'm delegating this to handle it as well as I would handle it. And I think those are really kind of two big sort of barriers to going down that route for most entrepreneurs, is just that fear of delegation out of those two reasons.
Yeah. And if you ever have an organization that grows to a certain point, you'll find that it can't grow any further once the entrepreneur, until the entrepreneur actually crosses that threshold. So we've had a couple of recent guests on the Opt Out Life podcast. Let's see, Adam Moyer, Knockarounds is a sunglass company, started as a kind of college campus experiment with a few $100s, and now it's a $10 million year business, if I remember right. Wow. Well, he had a couple of years that were rocky, and on reflection, he's like, why is revenue down? Well, expenses up. He was doing too much and needed to delegate. And it's the same lesson, whether you're me with 2 staff people or you guys with 1 staff person. What you learn is that if you have good people, they're more capable than you are. And so you need to get yourself out of the way as much as possible and empower them to do what they need to do. And they need you to do that because they're relying on us as the sort of the producers, as the creative aspect that's feeding fuel into this into the engine, right? So they're here, they're the engineers keeping the engine going. We're the ones feeding the fuel. Well, if you don't get out and get mind share, how can you be that person? If you don't go to conferences, which you should only be going to at your stage and my stage, you should only be going to conferences that are fun. Yeah. If you don't get out there and hang out at those, like we had for the Opt Out Beach Camp, and that involves like learning, being overwhelmed, drinking too much, coming back, energized with new ideas. That's what the people who are your staff and who you delegate, they need you to do that. So there shouldn't be guilt about that. And it, think of what you get from just a hike if you're an outdoors person, or doing that sport. For a lot of people in California, it's surfing. It just gets you out, and you can't do much when you're sitting on a surfboard in the middle of the water, right? It sort of forces you to let your mind go into different places, and I think you can't feel guilty about that. And overcoming that guilt is your problem and your challenge, and it's your responsibility to overcome that, and to take those days where you chill, where you go sit at the coffee house and do your thing, write creatively, journal, all these things that feel unproductive are actually the very thing that you need to continue the journey.
Yeah. The journaling, actually, you just mentioned that because I took that up recently, just every morning. And that has just done wonders for me. Just kind of write at least about a couple, 3 pages or so. And is that kind of like a daily practice of yours or something that helped you get through this process?
Yeah, it was in the last few years. I haven't. I mean, in Bali, I think journaling for me for about 10 years helped me craft my ideas and led to the clay that became the opt-out book. So for me, journaling was really, really useful, especially in the crucible. In the fire, you need to journal. And for me, the journaling was very often venting about whatever was going on. But that kind of is therapy. I mean, if you can dump some stuff that won't distract you in your journal, and you can put down some good ideas too. So journaling isn't always this sort of like a Zen-like creative process. Sometimes it's rage. And you just need to dump some of that. And by putting it down on paper, you're able to let it go from your mind, and the day moves on. And you've said it. I feel out of control because of this, and this. I want to resolve these things. You get the emotional part over, and then you move on with solving the problem, which is, a lot easier when it's solving the problem is not an emotional reaction or a result of stress or anxiety.
I actually find, so I'm a big journaler as well. I've actually kind of fallen out of it over the last couple of weeks, but I've always been a big journaler. And I've found personally that the journaling helps me solve problems that I'm pissed off about. Like, I'll start journaling and I'll start saying, I'm so pissed off right now because of this, that, and this is really frustrating and I don't know what to do. And I just start to like let my brain free and just unload whatever's going on. And by the end of my journal, I usually have a solution to whatever problem I started with.
Nice.
Yeah. I mean, it's if you think about what a good counselor or life coach does, they get you talking and they ask a few questions, and at the end, you've answered your own questions, right? You've solved your own problems, and they're smiling like, and there you go. You just did it.
It's a lot cheaper to get a notebook. Yeah,
that's right. Totally.
So the premise of all this is literally this mind share, all this, everything we're saying is your opt-out life concept. And I think it wasn't until the event, the beach event, which thank you for holding, because that think tank event, I've harassed DK so many times. I know mutual buddies like Dan Ryan, and I don't think he's bringing it back, but he should. But it seems like you're kind of bringing up that legacy in your own fashion. But the opt-out life, everything you do, it's like, do enough, it seems like. Create that mind share, create that financial freedom that you want, but don't kill yourself over it. And it was a good aha, even though, we've heard this before, but it's like when you're actually in person, like with you, with Nate, everybody else there, it was just fucking awesome. And I was just like, this is life. This is what it should be about. Talking about all sorts of stuff, not just, hey, my info product I'm launching. Like, no, let's talk some real estate. Let's talk about some, all this other cool stuff you could do and leverage your time.
I mean, I remember when we first started having these the events Nate and I hosted, like we called it SoCali, and I remember meeting people, a lot of them from that whole DK think tank group, and thinking, these guys, they got something that people don't realize. They got a little side hustle or two. They're making 10 grand on a digital product or they've got enough. And they're living the life they want. They're using that money to go hang out with cool people and learn more. And at the same time, I think everyone still had a little ambition to do something bigger. I think what I liked about it was I felt like, but they're doing okay, right? This isn't the feast or famine of like startups with fundraising and trying to get VCs to fund your new idea and chasing that with such slim odds of succeeding. What I liked was that these people had built lifestyles around their skills, and at the same time, they're doing some little investing, a little experimenting, and hoping that one of those businesses hits. And you've got those stories of guys that had whatever base hits. Chris Hedgecock's been on our podcast and told some of his stories about some of the businesses. You get them to grow, you make some money, maybe you sell it. Use that to leverage yourself into the next thing and level up. But no one needs the story of the $40 million exit. And I like that, because I think that creates anxiety. It creates false expectations and false hopes. It means that everyone's trying to win this lottery, and I just don't buy it. I think that's a rat race that I want to stay out of, and I want to be around entrepreneurs that aren't in it either. And at the same time, like, I wouldn't mind if one of my ventures hits and, sells for $40 million. That's cool. I have permission to have some ambitions with that, but I'm not going to pour my life into that and let it rise or fall on that, or I'm going to, lose what really matters, which is the control over my time and my life.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, it's funny because I sort of have to remind myself constantly, and Joe and I have this discussion all the time too about, we're constantly, not constantly, but we have a lot of stress and anxiety and stuff that bugs us out about our business and things that we're not happy with and stuff like that. And one of the conversations we have to sort of force ourselves to have every once in a while is, there's a lot of people out there that would kill to have the lifestyle we're currently living. Right. Joe and I, we both work out of our house. We do the 3 to 4 day a week work week pretty well. Some weeks we're working 3 days, some weeks it's 4. I don't think we ever put in 40 hours a week.
Shouldn't, at least.
I get to see my wife and kids every day, all day, most of the time, because they're around the house. And how many people, and we live in San Diego, right. How many people would kill for this lifestyle. And so some of the times we have to bring our own sort of problems into perspective, like some of the issues that, we might have like a cash flow issue where we didn't make sales on one of our products for an entire day, and we're like, oh man, we're fucked, right? But then, like, when you put it all into perspective, actually, no, we're still pretty good.
I know, it's all those like short-term things. I think it's those like short-term little like freak out moments that can really push into like an entire week if you let it, or even further, and then that could be a downward spiral for a lot of business owners. Yeah. We've been faced with that. We're like, oh, pump the brakes, hold up.
And saying that, we know quite a few people that are in the sort of 8-figure earner level, or have exited and that kind of thing. Pretty much most of them that I know, with one exception being Roland Frazier, pretty much most of them that I know are not super happy. They're not that much happier or enjoying life a whole hell of a lot more than we are.
Right.
Yeah. That just reminded me. I think I gotta introduce Roland Frazier to get on your podcast. I forgot to do that. Sorry, Dana. Making a note right now.
All right, send that email.
I will.
But right. Yeah. The sort of this massive money chase. It wouldn't. You can't guarantee it's going to happen. There's so much that can happen in life that it's just not really worth the approach that so many people take, I guess. And I think, again, like, I like the idea that people have permission to dream big, permission to try to get something that takes off. But the do or die, that you'd see, I think, in Silicon Valley culture amongst startup entrepreneurs is, it's sort of killing families and relationships and good people who very often, when you talk to them at the other end of that, have horror stories. We have one guest I've been trying to get on the podcast for a little while, who's been through the full VC funded business and who was miserable. And he actually did an exit at $18 million, which was exactly what they needed to pay back all their investors, so he could walk away with nothing.
Oh wow!
The next venture he did a little different and did a little better, and I think had a partner. I think the newest one is just him. So he's like gone the full gamut and is in the best place that he could be now that he's in control and doing it his way. So I like the idea of opting out of that whole culture. At the same time, look, if you've got a business that's growing and you hit a point where it's VC fundable, then give it a shot. I'm not a hater. I'm just, I see the fantasy get chased at the expense of everything else.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's a lot of grass is always greener going on between like at least from our perspective, because Joe and I have dabbled in the startup world. We were involved in a startup that actually did eventually exit. And we thought the grass was greener in that world. And when we got into it, we thought that was way more miserable than what we're doing now.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Because it turned into this type of thing where once you have a whole bunch of investors, you have a whole bunch of voices, you have a whole bunch of people that want to have opinions, that there becomes more red tape. There becomes more things that slow down processes, where us being a small business, we're nimble. We can iterate fast. We can experiment fast. We don't have to get other people's opinions. We don't have to run things by investors or ask for more money or things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and your odds of success in the venture without all of those other things are probably higher. I mean, I'm not, an economist, but just from a practical and anecdotal standpoint, I think you've got way higher odds of success with a venture that you totally control over having all the money and then having all of those voices and opinions and people who think they're experts and things you have to spend money on that you wouldn't. I mean, as a lawyer, I'll give you a quick anecdote. If you want to pick a trademark for your little business tomorrow, you don't need to get an opinion. You don't need to do a search, and you can file for $225.
Jeez.
If you've got venture money involved, you have a duty of due diligence now to your shareholders. You need to spend $4,000 on trademark searching and due diligence, and now you have more opinions than you need. Then you're going to run that by your marketing people, and then when you file, you're going to drop $1,000 or $2,000 on legal, because you can't do the homemade version of things. You can't take risks with other people's money. So just imagine that compounded with every decision you make in a venture funded business. And that's not even including the voice of the supposed smart people that are supposed to be there helping you out.
That's very true. Well, you're on the vein, I think, where we want to transition to now.
Yeah, no, I actually have one trademark for one of my old podcasts. We actually have a trademark on Beyond the Hype, which was insanely easy to get. I actually filed a form online, and like a year later, I had a trademark.
Right.
It just takes forever. Yeah. But going down the vein of some of the tech law stuff, I wanted to ask a couple kind of quick questions. I didn't want to dwell in this area for too long, because I think some of the other conversations are a lot more fun. But I know there are a lot of listeners that would have questions about some of these tech law kind of questions, mostly regarding things like terms and conditions on your page, privacy policies, disclaimers, and then like, the new GDPR stuff that's all coming out. I know all of this stuff. A lot of online business owners that are sort of creating online softwares and info products and things are always kind of concerned with this sort of thing. Yeah. So I'm kind of curious what your thoughts are and what sort of advice you give people who are setting up online businesses, because there are a lot of like automated systems where you can go answer some surveys and it'll spit out a terms and conditions for you. So I'm curious what advice you give people for, that gamut of things.
Right. And here it depends on your economics, but I give you you're not broke, but you don't have a lot of money scenario. Mm-hmm. I would rather have you file your own trademark and pay a lawyer to do your terms of use than bootleg the terms of use and pay a lawyer to do your trademark. Because the filing your own trademark, as you've said, Matt, is something that people can do. There's online tutorials. I'm working on an info product that would let you do searching and due diligence and tell you how to do everything without using a lawyer. But crafting your terms of use is difficult to find the perfect analogy. So, I mean, I have clients, for example, that do, photos and videos that you upload for, say, churches. And so you've got creatives uploading their content. You want like an agreement with them. And what if they have stolen that content from someone? Like you need those terms done right. And then the church that licenses and uses those, how do you get them to agree to use it the right way? And you're kind of brokering this transaction, so you address who owns what intellectual property. So that document, will cost you $3,000 from a mid-range law firm like ours. And then you're probably safer unless you could find somebody that's doing almost the exact same thing, and you really are a technical kind of writer. And in which case, maybe you could save money and draft that terms of use yourself. When it comes to privacy policy and GDPR, we're turning people away who don't have US only websites, because The liability is so high in Europe, and the kind of technical drafting can be done by other people cheaper. So, for example, we'd probably charge you $3,000 to do a privacy policy that's hopefully GDPR compliant. And there are services online that will do a fixed fee for $1,500, and they insure basically against you being in violation. So, I would I would just pay one of these new kind of flat fee services for doing your privacy policy, and that way you get terms drafted by a smart lawyer that helps you actually think through the transaction from a legal and business standpoint. You get a fixed fee privacy policy that is basically an insurance policy. And now your relationship with the outside world is locked down. And then, if you're tight on a budget, do your own trademark due diligence, be sure no one's using your trademark, and file it yourself. And there you go. I mean, I have clients that will do all of that through a firm like mine. I would avoid big firms unless you are funded by someone who wants you to use a big firm. They just cost more. I mean, it's just part of their infrastructure, that big fancy office that they have. I'm $450 an hour as a lawyer in my 20th year of practice. Wow. And I've taught this subject for 8 years at law schools in San Diego.
So it's like literally an overhead type thing.
It is. I mean, it's an overhead and everyone getting a piece of the pie. So there's big partnerships with lots of profit to share between partners. I would get $900 an hour if I was working at a big city law firm with just my resume. So you're paying half price by getting me at that price. My lawyer that works, my junior partner, she's half of what she would get as well. I think she's $260 an hour, and I think she would get $550 if she was billed through a bigger firm. So I highly recommend using smaller law firms and finding people that are relationship based, that are going to remember you when you come back and have a sense of who you are and what you're doing, and not going to just pass it down the line to some associate who's going to just try to fulfill their minimum billable hour requirement. And at the end of the day, you pay and you don't really get any better service.
Makes sense. And Kayla's awesome, by the way.
Yeah. Thank you. I think so.
You better, because she's running your company. Well, I don't know. I know, maybe.
Totally. Thanks, Kayla.
Yeah. Is there anything from a legal side that typical business owners, I know it's very broad, obviously.
Let's just say online business owners
that
have like an online presence,
that we should at least be aware of or address that we didn't bring up just now.
Yeah. The number one thing that seems to be happening over the past 2 years is that people of all intelligence levels think that they can take a picture from the internet and use it. So whether it's Google Images or it's the web blogs, you may not use photos unless you get them from a Creative Commons with attribution properly, or you get them from a licensing site like a royalty-free stock images like Shutterstock or iStock Photo or Getty Images. I think Getty owns all of those. But basically, you need to get licensed content when it comes from the internet. There's very few exemptions for that, and the consequences to my clients are, thousands of dollars in legal fees and thousands of dollars you have to pay the rights holder. And those photos are all full of metadata, so all they have to do is write a bot that tracks down where their photo was used, and they find you. So, the sort of easiest way to stay out of trouble is all original content. Take your own photos or license the photos. Regardless, I don't care whether it's a slide deck or a blog post that you're putting on your website. We have some information products that have pictures inside, and those are all licensed. I think the only exception are logos of companies, and we pull those from those companies' style guides. So if we want to put Facebook's logo up or LinkedIn's photo up, we go pull those from their websites, and that way we're using it properly in that sense that they've granted the right to use their logos. But other than that, we'd never use a photo that someone else might own unless we've taken it from a website. We've paid for a few of those sites that are free.
Yeah, no, that we've actually run into that in the past where we actually were using VAs to create some of our content for us. And apparently they were using Google Images to just find related images. And we actually got a kind of a nasty message from the Associated Press.
No, it was from Getty.
Oh, was it from Getty? I thought it was from AP. Okay.
Yeah, it might have, either way, it was a big company.
It was either Getty or AP, but we got a message from them basically with a giant number saying, "Here's how much you owe us."
Yes.
It was about $800, I think. Yeah, so
yeah, so that's interesting because that actually makes me a little worried, because one of the ways we actually make our podcast images is I guess we get permission from all of our guests to use their image though. So
yeah. Like if you guys go, my images, I have purchased, paid a photographer to take, or I took them, or my wife took them, or Nate took them, right? So, I have the right to tell you, you can use my image, and no guest is going to sue you for using their image because
right.
they're on here.
You saw our intake form. What we do is we basically ask for a guest to share their photo with us. And if they don't share a photo, we basically say, we'll go find one from your social media profile if you don't share one. And you give us permission to do that. That's essentially how we approach it. But I mean, I never have any idea who owns the rights to the images that they share with us. Even if they're in them, somebody could still technically own the rights to them. I'd say that's probably fairly rare, but technically they could, right?
Well, yeah. So that's actually another good point for entrepreneurs of all levels, is that when you have a photographer take your pictures, the photographer isn't selling you the pictures. They're selling you a license to use the pictures. So I use Flavio Scorsato, a longtime friend who does a lot of athletes and MMA fighters. So he's a pretty high profile, high paid photographer. And when I pay him to do a sitting, I'm not buying the photos. I'm buying the right to use those photos. And so I probably have the right to grant you the right to use it because it's within the scope of this implied license, right? But let's just say that you guys get Tony Robbins on your podcast. If you just go grab an image of Tony Robbins, whoever his photographer is might be pissed, because that photographer might have written a license that says that you can only use these pictures for X, Y, and Z. And you in particular didn't get permission from the photographer that owns those rights. And so by using that picture, you could get that photographer suing you, even though Tony might not care.
That's actually a perfect example, because I ran into that exact thing with Tony Robbins as I was creating.
Really?
This is no shit. I was working with Mike Koenigs back in the day for some sales videos, and he had a partner who essentially had Tony Robbins in the mix in this whole thing as someone, she worked with. And I think I was using some image from one of his websites. And she was like, whoa, hold on, we can't use that image. Or actually, I don't think you can use any images with Tony unless, you obviously license it from them. But he locks his stuff down. So
well, and that's the other piece is that the photographer, the Tony can't give you permission to use a photo unless he acquired the right from the photographer. But Tony could also, the photographer can't give you the permission to use the photo without Tony giving you his right of publicity, right? He has to release the right to use it. And of course, if you've interviewed him or used him in something, he probably would, and you might even get that consent in an email. Right. But typically, you'd ask for a model release from the person whose image it is, and then you'd ask for a photographer's release of the copyright from the photographer. So if you're doing a lot of that, your listeners can hit me up. I created one for our shoe company because we have a lot of people that are kind of like, we're not sure if they took the picture or the photographer did, and they're the model, and so when it's a post to social, we have them sign like a pretty short combination that's basically like, I'm the photographer, or the photographer is so-and-so, and they're consenting to this, and I'm in the picture, so I'm waiving my right of publicity. If they take their own picture, then you can have them waive the right of publicity and give you permission from a copyright standpoint, all in one little form that you have them sign, and then you're not worried about someone haunting you down later and asking you for those thousands of dollars.
That's smart. Yeah. Did you say you had a little checklist or a form that?
We created we realized people don't want to sign long forms, and when the photographer is the model, we just put the two into one. So I can genericize that, pull our company name out of it, and give it to you guys if you want to put it in the show notes or something.
That'd be super cool. Please. Yeah.
Cool.
Awesome. Yeah, this is good stuff. I know we're at an hour now. There's like a lot of stuff we can go down, but
there's a handful of topics we haven't even gotten to yet. That's on
I can keep talking if you guys want to keep talking. I don't know if you have a firm time limit.
Actually, we don't, luckily. I'm really curious, and I know you held a panel about real estate at your opt-out beach camp, and I was really fascinated by your approach, and I just wanted to kind of introduce that. We don't have to get super, super deep like you did there, but essentially my takeaway is tax breaks, and that's kind of like one of the big motivators for real estate for you, it sounds like.
Mm-hmm.
And
so I think I can condense it so that we're not wasting a whole bunch of people's time. I have this like a baby bear approach to real estate, and I've had the Pava Bear. I had 90 units across 3 apartment complexes, all within maybe 5 blocks in downtown Phoenix for a decade. And, I had all the ups and downs and lots of downs. I've had management companies that use my credit cards to buy paint for their properties. I've had managers who steal prescription drugs from tenants. I've had manager's girlfriend who was sipping all the vodka out of everyone's freezer. Turns out that when you have cheap apartments, almost everyone's an alcoholic, and they all have vodka in the freezer that another alcoholic who has keys can slowly sip down. The one building, my bookkeeper called it Jerry Springer. She'd be like, "We got problems at Jerry Springer today." And she just meant the Lexington. She just meant this one whole apartment building. So when I finally extracted myself from that, I sort of did the math with about the same value of owning 33 units. I could have a 4-plex in a really nice neighborhood. And I get all the tax benefits. You get a passive loss of up to $25,000 that you can write off against your other income. So that's about $8,000 a year in my pocket, even if a property breaks even. I can manage it myself, which saves me 6 or 7%. I can fix a few things myself, which saves me 6 or 7%. And then I can manage contractors when they do show up and they've got to look me in the eye. And when you've got a big apartment complex, they're just going to screw you. So I'm saving another 6 or 7%. So if you look at all the savings that you make, and then you have better tenants, you build relationships with them and treat them well. And you basically can have a 4-plex that does far better. I mean, for me, about double the financial performance of a 33-plex that had about the same value.
Wow.
And it gives me just enough real estate to get all the benefits without all of the burden that you get from a lot of real estate. And in the long run, I mean, just take $1.5 million 4-plex. In 20 years, that's going to be paid off, and throwing off $15,000 a month in cash flow. So and the mortgage is getting paid by the tenants.
Yep.
So
you're breaking even and more.
Exactly. I mean, the first year of one 4-plex, I broke even the first year. The next year I was making about $1,000 a month ahead. This year I'm $2,000 a month ahead. Next year I'm going to redo the exteriors, and the following year I'll start pouring all the extra cash into paying the mortgage down. And as entrepreneurs, I think it's a great backup. In 20 years, if my 401k and traditional investments don't perform and my businesses don't sell for millions and no one likes my book or podcast, I still have a retirement plan that's pretty fucking good, right? Yeah. I mean, that's like, if that performs, and there's no reason it shouldn't unless a sinkhole opens up and sucks my 4-plex down into it. Like there's no reason why people won't want to keep renting the units in this property. So, my approach is this, like, just enough. And that might be enough. Just one might give you all of those benefits depending on kind of where you live in the country. And you don't need more. So why burden yourself with like trying to become a real estate mogul and have 100 units if one 4-unit complex gets you everything?
Yeah, and I love that you are in San Diego. Your 4-plex is in like one of the hottest parts of the county, the city, and you're still pulling this off. And it's not a lot to manage. It's a part of town. I know you said I love it too. And it's just crazy. And I think the aha for me was the break even thing. Like when you're looking for a property, you don't have to get cash flow from day one. It's like just break even.
No. Well, and look, if you have a property that is, just take my example, $8,000 a year negative, but you have $8,000 a year in tax savings, and they're paying your mortgage down, you could be negative for a couple of years, and you're not really negative because the tax advantage is actually giving you that money back. You're breaking even and paying the mortgage down by virtue of the renters covering your mortgage for that time. So, and another cool trick is you can use FHA financing with 3.5% down if you just move into one of the units.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of people don't realize, like, you want that dream house. That's stupid. To, buying the biggest house that you can for your money is not the right move anymore. Buying a house with a unit behind it, you can Airbnb, or buying a fourplex and living in the main house and renting the other 3 units. That's the way to get the freedom that you want and have these other people paying your mortgage. And then at some point, you can move out of that fourplex and rent the main house and buy something else if you want. But you can get in that kind of deal cheap, gives you all these cool benefits. And a lot of people just kind of miss that opportunity.
Now, do you have more than one fourplex, or
I have 2.
You have 2. What are you looking for when you're looking for those fourplexes? Like, what sort of criteria are you going after?
Number one is neighborhood. I want to be where people want to be. And, for me, I'm buying in North Park. I like the zip code. I've got one on either side of 92104. And, because people, you just know when they show up, they're going to be like, yep, I like this neighborhood because I can walk to X, Y, and Z. There's bars, there's restaurants. I think millennials are way more responsible. They like Lyft. They're not driving drunk as much. They want to like get high and walk to the bar and not have to think about getting in a car.
And I mean, North Park is like, anybody listening who doesn't know San Diego, North Park is like craft beer capital of San Diego.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's
great food, great bars, restaurants, a great music venue called the Observatory.
Yep.
So it's a walkable place in San Diego. And it actually has multiple walkable neighborhoods. So there's like 4 major districts in that zip code, and you could live near any one of them and then Uber across to the other or walk to the one that's closest to you. And I think that's the number one thing I'm looking for. And then I'm looking for unmonetized value. I'm looking for some owner who is ambivalent, out of money, deferred maintenance. I mean, one of the first fourplex I bought, she hadn't done anything for 20 years.
Wow.
And so it took a little time, and I did some rehab. The second one, the other owner rehabbed, and I'm not sure if the partners were in dispute or they needed money, but it was just a good deal with rent that hadn't been raised for a while, and there was not really any deferred maintenance. So you get to come into that and just kind of like put some fresh paint in the units. The kitchens and bathrooms are redone, and raise the rent.
Yeah, that's an easy one.
They were under market a little bit.
I wish I had the foresight in North Park like 15 years ago, because that used to be a scary place to go in San Diego.
I know. Me too. When I was buying out in Phoenix, I should have just been buying in North Park. And it took that experience, I think, to do the math. I mean, there was a point at which, we have a condo at the beach, and at one point, say it was worth $1.3 million. We had a property in Phoenix that was probably worth the same. And my wife managed the beach condo in her spare time in between tennis. Mm-hmm. And has no management issues and no hassles, and then the revenue is just as good as like a big giant property that has all those headaches. So yeah, sometimes it's just a matter of like having the experience teach you, and then I'm just trying to teach that to people. Is like the opt-out approach to real estate is this idea of just getting enough and understanding why are you getting it, and then you just go for it for that reason.
Yeah.
It's awesome, man. I love it.
It's definitely a world we want to get more into. I mean, my experience and Joe's experience with real estate as of right now is just the houses we live in, we own.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah. And then that's fine. But, I talk about trying to monetize that. I tell people rent it while you're on vacation. When you take your next vacation, lock up some stuff. And one of our guests, Adam Daly, wrote a book, How to Run Away and Take Your Kids With You, How to Run Away from Home.
Oh, I need that book.
I like that.
I want to do that.
Yeah, listen to his podcast, and at the end he's talking about he's finishing this house. It's like $1 million+ house up in the hill in La Jolla, and he's like, I can't wait to finish so that I can take a vacation and rent it while I'm gone.
Oh yeah,
and I thought that was awesome because he's not like thinking about this house being protective of Like, I don't need to even worry about, what if they break something? I don't care. I'm going to have someone pay me $10,000 a month while I take a vacation with my whole family that only costs $6,000.
Dude, it's amazing. We literally, my wife and I and parents-in-law, we each have an acre out in East County of San Diego, and we live next to each other. It's not too close, but it's enough distance. But we thought about, we're like, we could totally just put this on VRBO or Airbnb and make it like in a state, like just big parties. It could be a family gathering or something. Mm-hmm. But we've actually thought about exactly what you said, did some math, and it was like, it was enough cash to be like, I'll go on vacation, take over the house.
Yeah. I mean, that's a way to make the house you have an asset. And then, of course, the other way is, in my book, I talk about building a Fonzie flat. I date myself because Fonzie is from a TV show that no one younger than me remembers.
Happy Days.
Yeah. So that, on Happy Days, Fonzie lived above the Cunninghams, and it's just extra money for them. And a lot of people don't realize they could carve out a room and just rent it to a grad student or somebody, or build an attic or put something over the garage, and you get all that income without having to go buy a duplex. If you really like the house you're in, find a way to build something, a unit that you can Airbnb, short-term, long-term, whatever you do. It's just extra money.
I could totally do an Airbnb at my house. I got enough rooms. We literally have rooms in my house we don't fucking use.
You of all people should be Airbnb. Yeah, my parents-in-law, they're doing that and crushing it on Airbnb.
My thing is, I'd want a second entrance into whatever room I'm given.
Just build it straight in. Just take a window and turn it into a French door, and that's lockable, and then deadbolt put a solid core door on the inside and put a deadbolt on it so they can't get in your house.
That's right.
Could totally do that. Could do that in the room we're in right now.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, I have a 5-bedroom house, and literally one of the rooms we call the cat's room because the only use it gets is that our cat frickin' sleeps in it all day long.
It's an annoying cat too. Cat, shut up. All right. So there's a lot of cool stuff you can do with real estate. We just start here at home, Matt. And read that book or the audiobook, because I think that would be...
Well, I need to get the Opt-Out Life book, and I also need to get the How to Run Away from Home and Take Your Kids book. The one. Yeah. I need both of those.
Well, let's get them, damn it.
But the sort of last little rabbit hole I wanted to go down with you was to talk about podcasting a little bit, because obviously we have a podcast, you have a podcast, and it's always fun to kind of chat about podcasting for a minute. So I'm curious what your goal starting the podcast was. What was the reason you decided to add a podcast into the mix?
It was a way to get the word out in, I think, an environment that's welcoming of podcasts. I mean, I feel like it's funny because I did a podcast over 10 years ago with a bunch of guys that were all kind of ex-church people. So we started a podcast called Out Churched, and all we did was get on and riff about our experiences kind of on our way out of church. And it was more catharsis probably than anything that would have helped a lot of people. But, it was corny and nerdy 10 years ago to be like podcasting, I mean, it was using a platform. Basically, it was like a WordPress based platform, and we didn't know what to do with it. I mean, it got out there and we got some listeners, but Nate and I sat down and we're like, how do you get the message out? What's a good way to craft this? And we realized, opt out. We don't want to be gurus that are like, listen to us, follow us, do what we say. We want to tell other people's stories and say, that guy got it. Do you hear his opt out story? And then we want to teach you through that opt out story. And inspire you and let you get, little clues from other people's stories about ways you can build your opt-out life. So it was more like engineering the message in a way that we want to convey on top of the book. So it's like, look, the book is here. It's a manual. The podcast is a tool that lets listeners kind of come in. And then ultimately, we want to build a community that has, people at all levels. And we're not really even sure how to segment that, because we've got people like you guys that are like, opted out in some level and around a bunch of other people that have, running businesses of their own, have had business experiences and can learn from each other. And that, for example, I can bring some great tools to guys at your level, but we also have newbies and people that are like, I'm 21, I want the opt-out life. And so, we want to build a community that can feed them as well. And we'll probably, monetize it from subscriptions. Our thinking is just something attainable. It might be $100 a month. It might be $50 a month. There might be some premium one that's got a whole bunch more interaction. That's more. But, if we can get a couple thousand people into a group that are helping each other find their opt-out life and resources, legal tools, all the stuff I bring, Nate brings with marketing, and kind of like be the pastors of that little church, then it's a good business. And I'm not afraid to make money from helping people. I think that's a cool opportunity for us to be like, all right, here's the stuff we're doing. Is this worth $100 a month to you? And we're bringing value to that. And if we can make great money from that, then we don't have to be gurus that sell you anything. I mean, I feel like so many of the platforms are built by someone that's constantly got to reinvent something, that there's some reason that you should keep being energized by their cult of sorts, their cult of personality. And for us, we want to build something that we're leading, but we're handing you tools, and there's a reason to hang out in that community for years into the future.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, you're speaking our language too, because we're still trying to achieve our. I mean, we've opted out in some ways. Obviously, we don't have to go to a day job. I actually sold my car. I don't even own a car anymore because I don't leave my house. And when I do, Joe's got 3 cars and Uber's available.
Yeah, I bought more, but they're all paying for themselves, so it's.
Right. Joe actually rents out his cars. He's got a passive cash flow from his cars.
I love that. Yeah, the Turo or one of those platforms.
Turo, and got a free Tesla out of it. So sweet.
Yeah,
quote
free.
But I mean, like, I feel like we're still trying to get our own opt-out status. I guess that it's sort of a moving target, though, for a lot of people. It's like once you kind of figure out what you want, and then you get to that point, then you realize there's something else that you probably want to, get rid of in your life. And for us, we're not, I don't know if I should be saying this publicly on the podcast, but we're not really a fan of selling info products.
Oh, yeah.
We do have our online courses and info products around traffic and marketing strategies and stuff. And it's kind of the first thing that we want to get rid of in the business, because we'd rather share information for free and make our income from other places. So, that's sort of our next level opt-out goal, is to finally get rid of selling info products in our business.
Hashtag opt-out goal.
Yeah.
I like that.
Love it. Yeah, I love it. That's great.
Yeah, maybe it's well, I know the membership you guys are talking about when you explained it at the event. I was like, well, that's a no-brainer. Just with your legal advice alone, monthly, I'll be like, yes, please.
Yeah. I mean, that is kind of one of the things we're trying to do with our courses, is we're trying to shift them away from selling courses and shift more into selling the community. You're getting access, and you're getting community, and you're getting like-minded members, and we're trying to shift our sort of messaging on the products that we sell more to the community messaging and less to the specific tactic that you're going to learn from us.
Right. Yeah. That's definitely where we want to go to.
So what are your plans with the Opt-Out Life event? Is that something you see doing annually and growing it bigger and bigger each time? Or where do you see that going?
Yeah, so this year was the first, and it was an experiment. When we first mapped it out, we thought we'd pitch it to our user base, and we realized that it was going to take a lot of energy and money, and we scaled it down and decided we'd make it only people we wanted to hang out with, like the people who are opt out already or are kind of on the journey, self-employed, and get them together and get them collaborating, have those panels, do the speed dating, and kind of like meet everybody and just bring people together and have fun, make it something you want to come back to. So the goal is to do the same thing and probably make it bigger next year. But, I'm not sure even next year it's going to be the kind of thing that we can resource someone who's totally new. I mean, that maybe we'll have room for a few, but I picture next year double in size. But we also are having talks with somebody that's pretty connected at EO about trying to make it bigger. And we'll see, because I think to do that, we need somebody who's experienced it running events, make it right, budget it right, figure out what the sort of strike prices are for the different levels of participation. So we don't know but we like the beach camp. We like the time of year. We like doing it in La Jolla or San Diego, where the weather is great, and connecting good people. And, that is how Nate and I really met at an event like this. We talked about Think Tank. We started our own group called SoCali, which we're basically turning into an opt-out kind of thing. I mean, I can envision a meetup in every city that's basically an opt-out meetup that people who are, embrace the theory run without us, that just kind of like bring people together. And, maybe we do a roadshow and go hit some of those events throughout the year and help boost them. But I think bringing people together in an informal way to learn from each other and collaborate has been invaluable to us in getting here.
We're going to have to connect you with...
We want to make it part of that.
We'll have to connect you with James Schramko. I'm not sure if you're familiar with him, but he's in Australia, but he kind of has put on larger and larger annual events, but he's also done that model where there's actual local events all around the world that are based on his super fast business brand, and they're sort of locally organized meetups all over the place.
Oh, and he does retreat style things like he did with Opt Out. Yeah.
So doesn't he go? Is it Bali that he go? Where does he go to?
Maldives.
Maldives. That's where he goes. So he goes there once a year, and he takes like a group of his customers, his higher ticket customers, and they all do a big surf trip out in the Maldives.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's love to see the message grow for Opt Out Life and have people get their lives changed. And I don't need to be responsible. I love the fact that I'm just kind of taking ideas from our guests, from the people we know in our network, and showcasing those and saying to people, there's a better model for you than the sort of things that you think it takes to be successful. Look at that guy or that woman and learn from them, and you go do that, and that's going to be success.
Yeah. Shouldn't be any harder than that, Dana. Yeah, I love it, my man. Well, thanks for hanging out with longer than normal.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, guys.
For sure. And really quick, so two more things. Any books or anything that you just typically reference often that you'd like to recommend here?
Yeah, I mean, there's a life-changing book that I think anyone who wants to sort of be self-realized, actualized, empowered ought to read. It's not very mystical. It's written by a psychologist named Dr. Scott Peck in the 70s. It's called The Road Less Traveled. And he wrote a follow-up called Further Along, The Road Less Traveled, two of the number one self-help books. I would tell people, read this. It will change your life. And then, the books that entrepreneurs read are just worth reading and rereading. 4-Hour Workweek, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Millionaire Next Door, the Richest Man in Babylon. These are, the Think and Grow Rich, How to Win Friends and Influence People. They're just the E-Myth, great book. 1 Minute Manager, might as well throw that in there. We are a little critical of some of the methods, but still, these books are great and life-changing, and they're popular for a reason.
All the books you just named, I don't think we have to ask this question for another 2 months or so.
There you go.
Those are all amazing.
Somebody actually mentioned The Road Less Traveled.
How about The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck by Mark Manson?
I actually haven't read that one yet, but I've seen that mentioned a lot.
Yeah.
The Road Less Travel book, somebody actually mentioned on the show recently, and it was the first time I'd heard it. But now that we've got two, I'll have to definitely pick it up.
Two's a winner. All right. And Dana, where should folks go check you out? I know you have your Opt Out Life podcast and some other stuff.
Just go to optoutlife.com. There's a button that says Start Here that kind of gives you a bit of a pitch. It's a sales page we wrote, so it's a little salesy, but we wrote it, so it's us.
You should still join.
And there's a button to just join the email list. We're pretty deliberate with what we email you, but we ask people to tell us their opt-out story, where they at, and then when they reply, we write them back. We're actually trying to interact with people. So if you're listening to this and you dig it, then go to our website, optoutlife.com, and get on our emailing list.
Freaking awesome. Yeah. Sweet. It's worth every second there. So go check Dana and Nate out. Thank you, Dana, man. It's been amazing.
My pleasure. Thank you both.
Yeah, we'll probably have Nate on here shortly. We'll drag him in here.
Sounds good. All right. Thanks, guys.
See ya.
Talk to you later.
All right. Thank you. And I hope you just enjoyed this episode you just listened to. Now, right now, before we sign off, I have a few things I would love for you to do. So the very first thing is to go find our guest on Facebook and tell them that you loved their episode with us. That's going to help them just feel good about themselves, but also it's going to spread the word a little bit more for us. So go find them on Facebook. Everybody's on Facebook, and go say that you love their episode and maybe one cool thing that you learned there. The second thing is to go to iTunes and subscribe to our podcast. Just look up Hustle and Flowchart and hit the subscribe button. And the very last thing, the third thing, is to leave us a review on iTunes or wherever you're listening to this podcast and help us spread the word more. That's how more people are going to get this awesome knowledge, this cool podcast training, and a whole bunch of other cool free training that we give out at evergreenprofits.com. So that's about it. Go find them on Facebook, go subscribe on iTunes, and leave us a review. You would be amazing if you did that, but you're always amazing. So thanks for listening, and we'll catch you in the next episode.